Have you ever wondered why the rich get richer and others don't? Could it be that a small percentage of the population pay others to find, study, and execute on legal loopholes that exist with our financial life and make it easier for them to prosper? The answer is a resounding yes. This is the Secrets of the Wealthy podcast with John Mintz. John has spent a lifetime researching and mastering the financial loopholes that he believes should be available to everyone. Join us as we explore different strategies that help you get farther faster towards building and enjoying a prosperous retirement.
Hello and welcome to the Secrets of the Wealthy with John Mintz. John, how are you?
Hey, Eric, I'm fantastic. It's been a couple of weeks. How you been?
I have been busy, but good. Busy's good right now, I think.
Yeah, I think that's the one common denominator. If I ask somebody how they're doing, I think 9 out of 10 people respond with that one word, right? So,
Yeah. Well, we're going to take a break now and have some fun. I love the topic of this podcast. You're actually going to be tackling some retirement planning and financial planning myths, right?
Mm-hmm. That's right. Yeah, looking forward to it.
I think there's a lot of misinformation out there, from both the media and also, our friends and our buddies. We talk, around the dinner table, whatever, around the barbecue pit, and just misinformation gets passed around a little bit. So I love the fact that you're tackling this. It's a top 10 list, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah, our top 10. Who knows what it could grow into by the time we start talking, though.
Right. All right. Where do we start today?
Well, let me just kind of start by just setting this up a little bit. This should be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to it because I have people come to me for the first time, meaning they've never seen an advisor before in their life. They're either in their 50s, their 60s, their 70s sometimes, and they're a little nervous, maybe a little scared, and then we meet 2 or 3 times, and inevitably they say, "Well, John, if I would have just came and saw you 5 years or 10 years or 20 years ago, man, I'd be so much better off now." And my response is always the same. Hey, it's better late than never, but it's the truth. And the reason they don't come in a lot of times is because of these myths and these misunderstandings about financial planning or retirement planning. And I hope to dispel some of those today, just like, you've heard me say in the past that if we can just make a difference, Eric, you and I, for one person or one couple, then man, we've won the battle, right? So
yeah, absolutely.
So let's start with the first one, and these are in no particular order of importance, obviously, because they're all important to someone. But one of the things I hear a lot is they think it's too expensive to meet with an advisor, or that all advisors will charge them to meet with them or to consult with them. I had a couple in this week, and we got all the way through the meeting. They seemed really excited, and then at the end, the guy says, "Well, almost, sheepishly, he's like, well, I have to ask this, and please don't blame me for asking this, but how much is this going to cost us?" Mm-hmm. And almost like he's almost like scared to hear the number. And well, I kind of snickered. And the wife said, "Oh, here it comes." Like she thought she thought it was going to be this really large
$1
number.
$1 million.
Yeah. And this is a true story. And I was snickering only because I get that question a lot. Yeah. And because of the number of years that I've been in the business and, my level of knowledge and expertise, a lot of folks have tried to get me to charge, my coach and some others. And so, but to this day, I do not charge a planning fee or a consultation fee. And it's just because I just feel like I have a higher purpose and I don't need to. Not to mention if 10 people sit with me, probably 9.5 of them decide to hire us as their guide. So I don't have to, like a lot of folks do. If you have an advisor out there and he meets with 10 people and only one of them becomes a client, then he's got to charge for the other 9 or he won't be able to keep the lights on, right?
Yeah.
So that's one of the myths. The other one is there are some advisors out there that are fee only or fee based advisors. And so I understand where that myth comes from. So just understand that, and they have a value. There's a value with those guys too, but just understand that not everyone charges for you to meet with them. You can get great advice without having to, pull out a second mortgage to do so.
Yeah. I think a lot of people equate advisors with attorneys. And in a lot of cases, if you want to consult or even tell the attorney what the issue is, there is a fee up front. We've experienced that in our own personal life. And you're just trying to find out if you want to work with the person or even get to know them as a person. And it's hard to think of, man, I'm going to get charged every time I go sit down with somebody. But again, I'm glad that you're dispelling that myth right off the bat.
Yeah, absolutely. And I could talk on that one for a long time. I mean, I had a couple in the week before last, and we got to the end. They said, okay, the last guy we met with, they had met with two people before me, two other advisors before me. So the last guy we met with said it was going to be $12,000 before we'd even, have a discussion. So
Jeez.
I said, well, okay, well, that's not me. So let's move on. But anyway, it's good to talk about. Then the second one would be, they say, hey, if I meet with an advisor, they're going to try to put me in the markets. In fact, sometimes they think they're going to try to put you entirely in the markets. And more and more folks these days are especially those that are approaching retirement or already in retirement, are scared of the markets for a lot of different reasons.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, again, it's exact opposite for me. I tell folks up front, and when I do workshops and classes, I tell the group this. I actually will not take on a client that wants to be 100% in the markets. Now, don't misunderstand me. I didn't say I won't take on a client that currently is 100% in the markets, because usually they're coming to me because of their fears associated with that, and there should be some fears associated with that. But if they come to me and I have a securities license, so I do mutual funds also. But if they're 100% in the markets and want to be there or want to get there, then they're not my client. Yeah. And so again, you can't paint every advisor with the same brush, right? Because it's just not the case, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And here's one that I'm not sure how this got started. I know I think I said on a previous episode where individuals, I find sometimes individuals have a 401k and they think that there's no taxes on that. And I'm not sure where that gets started or how it gets started, but this is kind of similar to that people feel like 100% or most of their health care costs in retirement are going to be covered by Medicare. And I could cite numerous studies. I mean, all you have to do is Google it and you'll come up with hundreds of studies that have been done on that. And the closest one I have found is a study that has shown for a 65-year-old couple retiring in 2021 will have total health care expenses throughout their retirement that's going to average somewhere around $660,000.
Oh my goodness.
Now that's not including what Medicare covers. That's outside of Medicare.
Oh geez. That's even worse.
So it is. And you got Medicare premiums, you got deductibles, you got co-payments for prescription drugs. And then on top of that, people can expect an average of 2 years of long-term care, which could add up to more than $200,000 per individual. Now that's for 2 years. If you go, 4 years, it'd be double that, depending on the type of care needed. In Texas today, the current monthly cost for long-term care is about $6,400 a month. So if I take a 63-year-old and the annual inflation on long-term care right now is a little over 3%. And so if I take that 63-year-old up to 80 years old, which is about the average age of when folks, need some sort of long-term care, then that cost would be $10,621 a month.
Yeah. And the funny thing, not the funny thing, the hard fact thing is that a lot of states, a lot of major cities, that's the cost currently if you're in a big city area. So that's, man, I can't imagine. It's tough.
You're absolutely correct. I didn't think of that, Eric, because this is, we're talking here in Texas in this area, but you're right, in New York or California or Maryland or a lot of other areas, it could be significantly more than that. That's correct. Absolutely. Good point.
Yeah. I know you work nationwide, so I wanted to mention that because it's staggering how much that costs.
It really is. And, some folks have long-term care policies that help with a portion or a large percentage of that. But I can tell you the lion's share of folks that come into my office do not have it, or they have a policy that's not going to cover very much of that cost. So anyway, I think it's important to plan for that cost, because if you go into retirement thinking that your medical expenses are going to be taken care of, and then you realize that a large portion is not, then you might possibly run out of money right in retirement.
Yeah.
This is one I talk a lot about. I think this is probably it may be, if I had to pick one that's the biggest or the most damaging myth out there, it might be this one. It's certainly in the top 2 or 3, but people believe that there is a risk-reward association with returns.
What do you mean by that?
And, well, that's one that we should probably dig a little deeper on before we kind of cover it. But risk-reward meaning the more I put my money at risk, the higher return I'm going to get.
I see.
The less I put my money at risk, the lower return on my money I'm going to get. And in theory, that is correct, but every individual situation is different, for starters, right? But there are a lot of ways to determine return, right? For starters. So a taxable account in the markets is going to return far less in every comparison than a non-taxable account not in the markets. So to break that down, if I have $1 million and I get a return of 7%, okay, but I'm paying 30% in taxes on that account. Simplify this, I'm going backwards by 23%, right?
Yeah.
But if I have a non-taxable account and I'm paying, that's a return of 2% and I'm paying no taxes, then I'm a +2. So would you rather be the +2 or would you rather be the -23, right? So I'm trying to simplify it, and that's exactly what I did. That's very oversimplified, but that's just one example of what I mean. But there are actually even more specific and more direct comparisons where I can show you where over the last 20 years, I could show a client where over the last 20 years, we have strategies that have returned, net of fees, have returned equal to, if not better than, a product that was at risk, meaning was at risk of the market losses, as compared to a product or a strategy that was not at risk of the markets. And I'll cover that strategy in my next 2 or 3 episodes, so that may be something that folks really want to tune into. I intentionally tease folks with that little sample there, but tune in to the next 2 and we'll break that down.
All right, that sounds good.
Let's see, what number are we on here? We're number 5. The best. It's always best to claim Social Security early. Again, this is a huge myth, and I understand where the thought process comes from. So if I'm 65 and I figure that I'm going to live till age 90, or excuse me, I'm 62 and I figure I'm going to live up to age 90. Well, collecting, that's the earliest I can start Social Security. So if I start at 62, I'll collect for 28 years, right? But if I wait until I'm 70, which is 8 years later, and I still only live to 90, then I'll only collect Social Security for 20 years. So it has to be better for me to collect for 28 years as opposed to 20, right? I mean, that
you're going to prove us wrong, aren't you?
Of course I am, but it sounds logical. It's a logical thought process, right? But what they don't understand, from full retirement age, which is typically 67, every year you take that sooner, you're penalized. And every year you take that later than 67, you're rewarded. And it's significant, to the tune of 8% a year.
Yeah.
After 67. So that being said, I had a client come in to me recently, and he was in his late 50s, and he's just trying to get ready and make sure all his ducks are in a row for retirement, which he wanted to retire in his 60, 61, 62, somewhere around there. And he said, John, I've run the numbers, and my wife and I are going to start Social Security at 67. And I said, okay, you can do that. But we ran him through our optimization software. And if she starts at 67 and he starts at 70, they would collect combined over $250,000 more. I'll give you a better one. My wife and I, and she's a little younger than me, I have ran so many scenarios, and just for the sake of squeezing every dollar out of the sponge, because these, our software will run scenarios, literally hundreds of different scenarios, and you can see them all, from the very least optimal to the very most optimal. The most optimal strategy, her and I will collect over $800,000 additional Social Security, not total, additional Social Security, by using the most optimal strategy as opposed to the least. So we're not talking about small numbers here. You know what I mean?
Yeah, seriously.
And this is one that just a lot of folks get wrong. And it's really sad, because the average individual leaves over $100,000 on the table from just picking the wrong filing strategy. And, the average couple is well over $250,000. And that could be the difference. Again, that could be the difference between them running out of money or not running out of money in retirement, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially if they were to live longer than, I'm just saying to 90, which is what I project. But I had a guy in my office just yesterday, and he said, well, my dad lived to 97 and his brother lived to 99. And so he's kind of planning on living that long too, or if not longer. And that you have to take that into account, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Family history is huge.
It is. And, my family history is a little bit different. My father passed at 73, and my grandfather on his side passed at 73, both from heart disease. And so I'm going to do my best to break the chain. So
yeah, absolutely.
So see if I can live longer than that. But okay, another one is annuities. Oh my goodness, we could have an entire show just dedicated to just annuity myths. There's a lot of misunderstandings around annuities. In fact, there's way too much to talk about here today. So that's why I'm going to spend my time on the next, 2 or 3 podcasts. We'll see how many that we're going to go. It's going to take us, but just to talk about a lot of the misunderstandings. In fact, that those podcasts are going to be called The Truth and Lies About Annuities. I'm not going to just beat around the bush on this. I'm going to go hit it straight between the eyes with the 2x4. So, but I'll just give you a couple here. A lot of folks believe that annuities are limited on how much they can grow. It's just so not true. They believe that there are caps, and they believe that growth is limited because there's this thing called caps on them. And a cap means that if your annuity is tied to an index that grows 10, 15, 20%, but your cap on your annuity is 3, well, all you're going to get is 3. So the truth of the matter is that that is the case, that they are correct. And on any annuity that's older than 4 or 5 years old is primarily going to be on most annuities. But what they don't know, because things are constantly changing like our cell phones, is annuities change too. And most of the newer annuities no longer have caps on them. So the growth is unlimited at that point. And so we'll get into that. Fees is another one, and I'll break all this down in much more detail next time. But fees, people just believe that they've been told by another advisor or, Billy Bob next door or whoever it is that, annuities are riddled with fees. Well, okay, so what type of annuity are you talking about? Are we talking about a variable annuity, which does have a lot of fees? Or are we talking about a fixed annuity, which typically has no fees? Or are we talking about a fixed index annuity? Some have fees and some don't. And so, again, there's just, you can't paint with one stroke with a brush, paint all annuities alike, because they're just not. But we'll get a lot further into that on the next one. I'm really looking forward to that because I get a lot of questions about annuities on a consistent basis. It's one of my favorite tools in my tool belt for the right folks at the right time.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I'm really looking forward to those podcasts.
Oh, super. All right, we're moving right along. Number 7, my taxes will be lower in retirement. That is a myth. That is a misunderstanding. It's a downright lie in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
In fact, I can't tell you how many times I come in and people are downright, we'll just say they're mad as a hornet because they took some money out of one of their accounts the previous year from their advisor and their accountant, and they talked to them, and then come to find out when they took that money out, not only did they have to pay tax on that money, but it increased their tax on the rest of their money, including their Social Security at the same time.
Oof.
So, some of the reasons why folks think that their taxes will be lower in retirement is because they think that they're going to spend less in retirement, right? Well, my response to that is when I hear that, I say, well, did you work 40 years of your life to then say, I'm going to cut back and lower my standard of living? I mean, really? That's just not my way of riding off into the sunset. Eric, I don't know about you, but I actually plan to spend more in retirement because all I've done my whole life is from the time that I was knee-high to a grasshopper in West Texas, that my dad had me working from the time I woke up to the time I went to bed, and I've done it until this day. And so when I don't do it anymore, I'm going to have some fun. So,
right?
yeah, for sure. Whether it's traveling or giving money away to my kids or charities or whatever it is, I'm gonna enjoy my money. So I just think that's wrong, and a lot of folks. Again, I just give people stories and examples so that they can relate to, but I have usually widows that get referred to me and they say, I wanted to take some money out of my account and my advisor told me I shouldn't do it. And I just always feel like I have to beg for my money. and they have way more money than they'll ever spend. And I say, you know what? Well, all I can tell you is that my thought process is a little bit different, and I actually probably encourage you to spend your money and enjoy it because that's what you saved it for. But so that's the first thing. The second thing is when we're working, we have lots of deductions, right? Can you think of one or two big deductions that you have while you're working before you retire, Eric?
Oh yeah, well, up until a couple of years ago, I had kids. I still have kids, but now they've all moved out, so I don't get those deductions anymore. So I do miss those. And then I've got a house, so that is always kind of counted. Well, until they changed the law, a couple of years ago, and so now it's depending on how you file, it can be completely different. But yeah, I had some deductions.
Yeah, and there's discussions now that the tax laws that they're talking about changing here, that they're going to increase the deduction for kids. And so again, you had those are two of the majors right there, the kids in the house. Well, most folks want their house paid off, right, before they retire, and the kids are gone, or they're at least old enough, whether they're gone or not, they're old enough to where you can't claim them anymore.
Yep.
And so if your deductions are gone, then although you may not have as much income, it's now no longer offset by deductions, so you still may be in the same tax bracket, right?
Yeah.
On top of that, they forget they saved their whole life in this thing called a 401k, both of them, and now they're going to be forced to start taking that money out, whether they want to or not. We talked about that on a previous episode. If you haven't listened to that, you might want to go back. I think it's episode 4 and 5. We really dug into required minimum distributions. That money, basically, if you have $1 million in a pre-tax account starting at age 72, give or take, the amount that's going to be forced out is around $40,000. And that's on top of all your other income, your pension income, you've got Social Security thrown in there. And so again, there's this thought, well, I'm going to spend less. Well, are you going to spend more than 40,000 less just to offset the 40,000 that's going to come in?
Yeah.
Right? I don't think so. You'll be living in poverty then at that point, probably. So, and then finally, when one spouse passes, the remaining spouse has to switch to a single filer. And this is one that not a lot of folks are aware of. And again, we're talking about folks that say, hey, my taxes are going to be lower in retirement, and that being a myth. So I just pulled up before we got on the phone here an example. A $41,000 couple making $41,000 last year, Eric, 2020, married filing jointly, would have been in a 12% tax bracket, right? Mm-hmm. And so let's just say that one of the spouses died towards the end of 2020, and now the spouse remaining still here has the same income of $41,000. But now as a single filer in 2021, his or her tax bracket would go from 12% up to 22%. And nothing changed except, we lost one of the spouses. That's it. Yeah. So again, it's just, there's so many different things that go into planning for retirement. But to think that I'm going to retire and to think that my taxes are going to be lower, don't think that. It just doesn't happen.
Yeah. All right, what's the next one?
By the way, the next one I kind of combined in with that, the one we just reviewed. So 7, was to say that was 7 and 8. I'll spend less in retirement was one that I was going to talk about. Mm-hmm. It goes along with my taxes will be lower in retirement. So we're on number 9 here. And hey, it's too late for me to lower my taxes on my 401k or IRA. Well, go back and listen to episode 4 and 5 if you think that. It's never too late to lower your taxes. It has to do with when you pay your taxes, how you pay your taxes, mm-hmm. and how we can convert them to non-taxable structures. So we'll cover that. Again, go back and listen to those episodes. And then finally, and then we'll wrap this up, Eric, is the belief that before I can retire, I need to have X dollars saved. Or if I have X dollars saved, let's just say if I have $1 million saved, then I can retire and not run out of money. Mm-hmm. That's just so far from the truth.
Yeah.
So my questions would be this for that individual. Well, you're basing that on what taxes? What do you mean? Well, you base on the taxes you pay today because those are probably going to increase. Have you figured that in? Mm-hmm. And are you basing that on today's inflation? Because it's probably going to increase. And by the way, it's already starting to increase, isn't it? We've noticed that now. And are you in the markets at all? Yes. Well, are you planning on the markets declining? Well, no. Okay. Are you planning on the markets declining sooner than later? Because if they do, that has a dramatic impact. No. And what if all of these things happen simultaneously? Mm-hmm. So that $1 million may become more like $100,000, right? And so, and again, if any one of these 10 things impacts an individual listening today, I just encourage you to find someone to sit down with and let them analyze your situation for you. I've talked about it all the time that, I'm not the smartest guy that's ever been born. I just have a lot of really, really cool, smart tools, and I'm good at using them that can help us determine and help you understand that you can dispel these myths and you can retire and you can be much more certain that you're not going to run out of money in retirement. So I think we're getting close to the time. It's time to close this out, Eric. I could go on forever. I love talking about this stuff, but we'll stop there for the day, okay?
Yeah, this is a fantastic list. I mean, it's things that people need to consider. And man, you hit me right in the heart with that last one, because, what if taxes increase? Well, we saw how much stimulus went into the economy in the last year. We know mm-hmm. Uncle Sam's going to want that back. And you talked about that in, one of your, the Perfect Storm series that we spoke on, or mm-hmm. that you spoke on and taught the audience about. And then what about inflation? I've been judging inflation by the price of the 2x4s I'm buying because I'm remodeling. That's ridiculous. A couple years back, I paid $3.50 a 2x4. I just saw yesterday they're $11.50 for one 2x4. You want to talk about inflation? We know it happens, right? And then, of course, the markets decline. We had a good example of that last year. And I really feel for people that retired right before that happened and they still had their money in the markets. It's scary. So I love the fact that you've addressed all 10 of these, and that I know that we're going to dive into annuities on the next podcast, next couple podcasts possibly. I'm really looking forward to it. If people want to meet that person, like you're saying, they want to sit down and have that conversation, what's the best way to get a hold of you? Just one more time, I want to make sure they have that contact info.
Well, yeah, I'm just going to give a phone number out today. We do have a website, which you can find easily, but I think folks find it easiest to be able to talk to somebody. When you call us, somebody actually answers the phone, and we'll talk to you. But our direct number is 817-225-6260.
Perfect. Thank you so much, John, for your time today and the education. I love learning new things from you.
Been a lot of fun, Eric. Look forward to the next one.
All right. And our last thank you goes to you, listening audience. Thank you for tuning in and listening to the Secrets of the Wealthy podcast with John Mintz. If you have not subscribed to the podcast yet, please click the subscribe now button below. This way, when John comes out with a new podcast, it'll show up directly on your listening device. This makes it much easier to share these podcasts with your friends and family. Again, thanks so much for listening. For everyone at the Secrets of the Wealthy, this is Eric Johnson reminding you to live your best day every day. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Secrets of the Wealthy podcast with John Mintz. Click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of John Mintz. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investing advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial service provider with any questions you may have regarding your investment planning.